The 7 ships came down from the sky like falling stars made of glass. They were beautiful in a way that made people stop and stare. The ships caught the sunlight and broke it into colors that humans had never seen before. All around the world, people watched on their televisions and phones as the voluntary delegation landed in Geneva, Switzerland. The voluntary were not the first aliens to visit Earth. That had happened 5 years ago, when a small trading vessel had made contact. But this was different. This was royalty. This was a princess from one of the oldest and most powerful empires in the known galaxy. Her name was Selythra, and she was the daughter of the Emperor of the Third House. By human standards, she looked like something from a dream. She stood 8 feet tall, with skin that shimmered like oil on water, changing colors as she moved. She had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on her face, and when she spoke, her voice sounded like wind blowing through crystal tubes. She had lived for nearly 300 years. To her people, she was still considered young, almost a child. But she had seen more of the universe than any human could imagine. She had walked on worlds that orbited dying stars. She had swum in oceans of liquid diamond. She had attended parties that lasted longer than human civilizations. And now she was here on this small blue planet because her father had ordered it. The exchange program was meant to build trust between species. One voluntary noble would spend a year on Earth, learning about human culture. In return, a human would travel to the voluntary homeworld. It was supposed to be a gesture of friendship and peace. Selythra saw it as a punishment. She walked down the ramp of her ship with her head held high and her 4 eyes narrowed with displeasure. The humans had gathered to welcome her. There were diplomats in expensive suits, military officers in formal uniforms, and reporters with cameras pointed at her face. They all looked so small, so fragile, so temporary. The lead diplomat stepped forward and began a long speech about cooperation between species and the dawn of a new era. Selythra barely listened. She was too busy studying the crowd, looking for anything that might be interesting. She found nothing. Then she noticed the boy. He was standing slightly apart from the others. He was young, maybe 17 by human counting. He had dark hair and dark eyes, and he wore a simple suit that looked borrowed. He was not smiling like the others. He was not nervous like the others. He just stood there, watching her with a calm and steady gaze. "Who is that?" Selythra asked, interrupting the diplomat's speech. The man stumbled over his words before recovering. "That is Marcus Chun, Your Highness. He has been selected to be your guide and cultural liaison during your stay on Earth." Selythra walked toward the boy. The crowd parted for her like water around a stone. She stopped in front of him and looked down. He barely reached her chest. "This is what your species sends to greet royalty?" she asked. Her voice carried across the silent crowd. "A child? One who has lived fewer years than I have spent sleeping." Marcus did not answer. He simply looked at her with those dark, quiet eyes. Then he bowed, a smooth and practiced motion, and gestured toward the line of vehicles waiting nearby. Selythra felt a flash of annoyance. She was used to reactions when she spoke. Fear, awe, sometimes anger. But this boy showed nothing at all. "Does it not speak?" she asked the diplomats. One of them, a nervous woman with gray hair, cleared her throat. "He speaks when he has something worth saying, Your Highness." Selythra laughed. The sound made several humans flinch. It was too sharp, too strange for their ears. "How quaint," she said. "A mute pet to show me your little world. Very well. Let us see what wonders humanity has to offer." She walked past Marcus without another glance. He fell into step behind her, silent as a shadow. The drive to the accommodation took 30 minutes. Selythra spent the time looking out the window at the human city. It was so primitive. The buildings were made of concrete and glass instead of grown crystal. The vehicles burned ancient fossil fuels instead of drawing power from the fabric of space itself. The people walked around with tiny computers in their pockets, thinking themselves advanced. 300 years ago, her people had been traveling between galaxies while humans were still dying of simple diseases. Your world is very... She paused, searching for a word that would not cause a diplomatic incident. Rustic. Marcus, sitting across from her in the vehicle, simply nodded. I said your world is rustic, she repeated, louder this time. I heard you, Your Highness, Marcus replied. His voice was calm and even. Would you like me to show you the old quarter tomorrow? Some of the buildings there are over 500 years old. Very rustic indeed. Salithra stared at him. Was he mocking her? She could not tell. His face gave away nothing. You are a strange creature, she said finally. Thank you, Your Highness. That was definitely mockery. Or was it? The boy's expression remained perfectly neutral. Over the next few days, Salithra settled into her temporary home. It was a large estate outside the city, chosen because it offered privacy and security. Marcus appeared each morning at exactly 8 o'clock to discuss the day's schedule. He would bow, present her with options, answer her questions, and then wait in silence until she made her decisions. He never complained when she changed plans at the last minute. He never showed frustration when she criticized human technology, human art, or human intelligence. He never rose to her bait when she made comments about the primitive nature of his species. He just watched her with those quiet eyes, and waited and said nothing. What Salithra did not know was that Marcus Chen had been chosen very carefully. The diplomats reviewed hundreds of candidates before selecting him. They needed someone who could handle pressure without breaking, someone who could endure insults without losing their temper, someone who understood that sometimes the best response to cruelty was no response at all. Marcus had learned this lesson long before any diplomat had come to recruit him. He had learned it in foster homes where showing weakness meant suffering. He had learned it on streets where the wrong word could get you hurt. He had learned it from years of being overlooked, underestimated, and dismissed. Silence was his armor. Patience was his strength. And he had more of both than the alien princess could possibly imagine. The year was just beginning, and Marcus Chun was ready to wait. The weeks passed slowly for Princess Salithra. Each day brought new frustrations. The food was too simple. The entertainment was too boring. The people were too fragile and too short-lived to be truly interesting. And worst of all, her silent guide refused to give her what she wanted most, a reaction. She had tried everything. She had mocked his clothing, calling it the skin of a servant. He had thanked her for the observation. She had laughed at human music, saying it sounded like animals in pain. He had offered to play her something different. She had called human literature the scribbling of infants. He had asked if she would prefer poetry or prose. Nothing worked. The boy was like water. Every attack passed through him without leaving a mark. One morning, they visited a museum in Washington. It was called the Smithsonian, and it was supposed to contain the greatest treasures of human history. Salithra walked through the halls with her hands clasped behind her back, looking at everything with poorly hidden contempt. This is a stone tool, she said, stopping in front of a display case. Your ancestors used rocks to kill animals. How charming. Yes, Your Highness, Marcus replied. That tool is about 2 million years old. It represents one of the first technologies our species ever created. 2 million years, and you went from hitting things with rocks to hitting things with slightly better rocks. She gestured at a display of ancient weapons. My people were composing symphonies that lasted for decades when your ancestors were still climbing down from trees. Marcus did not respond. He simply stood beside her, waiting for her to move on. "Does that not bother you?" Saylythra asked. She turned to face him, her 4 eyes studying his expression. "To know that your entire species is so far behind? That everything you have accomplished is nothing compared to what we achieved long ago?" "Every species has its own path, Your Highness," Marcus said. "We are proud of how far we have come. Proud." She laughed, that sharp and crystalline sound. "Proud of what? You have barely left your own solar system. You still die of diseases. You still fight wars among yourselves. You are children playing with dangerous toys." "Perhaps," Marcus agreed. "Would you like to see the space exhibit next?" Saylythra wanted to scream. She wanted to grab this infuriating boy and shake him until some emotion fell out. But she controlled herself. She was a princess. She would not lower herself to physical violence against a primitive. Instead, she found other ways to hurt him. During diplomatic events, she would make comments about his youth and inexperience. She would suggest that Earth had sent her a guide who was barely more intelligent than a pet. She would smile while she said these things, and the other diplomats would laugh nervously, not sure how to respond. Marcus never defended himself. He would simply stand there, his face blank, waiting for the conversation to move on. In private moments, she was even crueler. One evening, after a particularly boring state dinner, she threw a precious artifact at him. It was a voluntary memory crystal, worth more than most Earth cities. It had been a gift from her father before she left home. Marcus caught it. His hand moved faster than she had expected, snatching the crystal from the air before it could hit the ground. He examined it for a moment, turning it over in his fingers, then set it gently on a table. "Your reflexes are acceptable," Saylythra admitted. She had not expected him to catch it. He said nothing. "Show me your anger," she demanded. She took a step toward him, using her height to loom over him. "I know you primitives have tempers. I have read your history. Wars over territory. Wars over religion. Wars over nothing at all. Your species is violent and emotional and barely controlled. Show me that side of yourself. Show me the beast that lives inside every human." Marcus looked up at her. His dark eyes were calm, almost peaceful. "Would you like me to arrange a tour of the Lincoln Memorial tomorrow, Your Highness? It is very beautiful at sunset." Saylythra stared at him for a long moment. Then she turned away in disgust. What she did not understand was that Marcus Chen had faced far worse than an arrogant alien princess. When he was 6 years old, his parents had died in a car accident. He had been placed in the foster care system, passed from home to home like an unwanted package. Some of those homes had been kind. Many had not. He had learned early that showing pain only invited more pain. When the older kids in the group homes had mocked him, he had stayed silent. When foster parents had treated him like a burden, he had asked for nothing. When teachers had dismissed him as just another troubled child from a broken home, he had proved them wrong with perfect grades and quiet determination. Silence was not weakness. Silence was survival. And patience was not surrender. Patience was strategy. Every day, while Saylythra was busy being cruel, Marcus was watching. He noticed how she spoke to her own attendants, which ones she trusted and which ones she dismissed. He observed her reactions to different foods, different music, different experiences. He learned what made her curious and what made her bored. He studied her the way a scientist studies a new species, because Marcus Chun had a goal. He had applied for this position not because he wanted to serve an alien princess, but because he wanted to become a diplomat. He wanted to build bridges between worlds, to help humanity find its place among the stars. And to do that, he needed to understand how other species thought. Saylythra was teaching him more than she knew. One night, about 2 months into her visit, the princess sat alone in her quarters. Her attendants had been dismissed. The lights were low, and for the first time since arriving on Earth, she felt something she had not expected to feel. She felt lonely on her homeworld. She was surrounded by family and friends and servants who understood her. Here, she was a stranger in a strange land, surrounded by creatures she could not comprehend. The diplomats feared her. The scientists studied her like a specimen. The reporters wanted only stories and scandals. And Marcus Chen, the one human she saw every day, remained a mystery. She had given him every reason to hate her, and yet he continued to serve her without complaint. She had humiliated him in public and in private, and yet he returned each morning with the same calm expression. It was infuriating. It was confusing. And, though she would never admit it, it was beginning to earn her respect. The cultural exhibition in Tokyo was supposed to be a celebration. Humans and Valentari had worked together for months to create a display of art and artifacts from both worlds. The great hall was filled with precious objects. Ancient earth paintings hung beside voluntary light sculptures. Japanese swords rested in cases next to crystalline weapons from distant stars. Princess Selithra walked through the exhibition with her usual expression of bored superiority. Marcus followed 3 steps behind, as always. The hall was crowded with diplomats, reporters, and security officers from both species. No one noticed the 3 figures moving through the shadows. They were Valentari, but they did not belong to the official delegation. They were members of a group called the Purists, fanatics who believed that contact with lesser species was a corruption of their ancient culture. For years, they had been planning to send a message to the galaxy. And tonight, Princess Selithra would be that message. The first sign of trouble was a soft humming sound, like a swarm of distant bees. Then the lights went out. Panic spread through the crowd immediately. Humans screamed and pushed toward the exits. In the darkness, flashes of energy lit up the hall as voluntary weapons fired. Bodies fell. Glass shattered. The air filled with smoke and the smell of burning. Selithra froze. She had lived for 3 centuries, but she had never experienced true violence. Her life had been one of comfort and privilege, protected by guards and shields and the power of her family name. Now, standing in the darkness with death all around her, she discovered that she did not know how to move. Her guards were down. She could see their bodies on the floor, their life energy fading. The other Valentari attendants were scattered, fighting or fleeing. And the human security forces were overwhelmed by technology they did not understand. 3 figures emerged from the smoke. They were tall and slender, their forms hidden beneath cloaking devices that bent light around them. They carried weapons that hummed with deadly power, and they were walking straight toward her. "Princes of the 3rd house," one of them said. His voice was cold and mechanical, filtered through a mask. "Your father's policies have brought shame upon our people. Tonight, you will pay for his weakness." Selithra tried to speak, but no words came. For the first time in her long life, she was truly afraid. Then a hand grabbed her arm and pulled her backward. Marcus. Chen moved with a speed she had not known humans possessed. One moment she was standing in the open, a target. The next, she was behind an overturned display case, pressed against the floor. "Stay down," Marcus said. They were the first words he had spoken to her all day, that were not in response to a question. She looked at him in the dim light filtering through the smoke. His face had changed. The calm, patient expression was gone. In its place was something else. Something focused and fierce and utterly determined. "What are you doing?" She whispered. He did not answer. He was already moving. The first assassin saw him coming and raised his weapon. The energy beam shot through the air, missing Marcus by inches as he rolled to the side. He came up beside a decorative fountain, grabbed the heavy metal chain, and swung it with all his strength. The chain hit the fountain's base and shattered the connection to the power supply. Water sprayed everywhere, carrying an electrical current across the floor. The first assassin screamed as the charge hit his unprotected legs, then collapsed in a twitching heap. The second assassin turned toward Marcus, but the human was already gone. He had grabbed a ceremonial Japanese sword from a broken display case and was circling through the smoke. The assassin fired blind, his energy beams cutting through empty air. Marcus reached the fire alarm and pulled it. The sprinkler system activated, filling the hall with mist and foam. The assassin's targeting systems, designed for clear visibility, went haywire. He could not see. He could not aim. He could not understand how a primitive human was doing this. He never saw the fire axe until it was too late. Marcus pulled the weapon from the emergency station on the wall and swung it in a single, brutal motion. The assassin fell. His crystalline armor cracked open, his body still. 2 down. 1 left. The third assassin was smarter than the others. He had found the princess. His weapon was pressed against her head, and he was using her as a shield. "Stop," he commanded as Marcus emerged from the smoke. "Come any closer, and I will kill her." Marcus stopped. He was covered in water and foam and blood. His borrowed suit was torn. He held the bent fire axe in one hand and a broken sword in the other. He looked nothing like the quiet, patient boy who had guided the princess for months. He looked like what he was, a survivor. "You cannot save her," the assassin said. "Drop your weapons, surrender. Perhaps I will make your death quick." Marcus looked at the princess. She was trembling, her 4 eyes wide with terror. For months, she had treated him like nothing. She had mocked him, humiliated him, tried to break him in every way she knew. And now her life was in his hands. He dropped the fire axe. The assassin smiled behind his mask. Then Marcus threw the broken sword. The blade spun through the air, catching the light from the emergency lamps. It was not a perfect throw. It was wild and desperate and slightly off target. But it was enough. The assassin moved to deflect it, his weapon arm shifting away from the princess for just 1 moment. Marcus was already running. He hit the assassin with his full body weight, and they both crashed through the window behind them. Glass exploded outward. Cold night air rushed in, and 2 figures fell toward the concrete below. They landed hard. The assassin's personal shield absorbed most of the impact, designed to protect its wearer from exactly this kind of fall. Marcus had no such protection. The sound of bones breaking was loud in the sudden silence. But somehow, impossibly, Marcus was still moving. He was on top of the assassin, his hands finding a shard of broken glass. The assassin's shields were designed to stop energy weapons and blunt force. They were not designed for a primitive piece of shattered window driven with desperate strength. The glass found the assassin's throat. Blood that was not red sprayed across the concrete. The assassin made a gurgling sound and went still. Marcus tried to stand. His left arm hung at a wrong angle. His chest felt like it was filled with broken glass. Every breath was agony. But he had to get up. He had to make sure the princess was safe. He made it 2 steps before his body gave out. When Selithra found him, he was lying face down in a pool of blood. His breathing was shallow and irregular. His skin was pale and cold. And his dark eyes, when she turned him over, were barely focused. "Hold on," she said. Her voice was shaking. "Stay with me. I can fix this. I can." She placed her hands on his chest and began to channel her energy into his broken body. It was a technique her people used on each other, a way of repairing cellular damage through pure will. It was exhausting, dangerous, and rarely used on other species. She did not care. This human, this primitive, this boy she had spent months tormenting, had just saved her life. He had faced 3 trained assassins with nothing but his strange, human courage and his refusal to give up. She would not let him die. "Stay with me," she whispered again. "Please." For the first time since she had arrived on Earth, Princess Selithra meant what she said. 3 days. For 3 days, Princess Selithra sat beside the hospital bed and poured her energy into the broken body of Marcus Chun. The doctors had told her it was hopeless. The human boy had 4 broken ribs, a shattered collarbone, a fractured arm, internal bleeding, and damage to his spine. By all rights, he should have died on the concrete outside the exhibition hall. The fact that he was still breathing was a miracle. Selithra refused to accept it. She had lived for 3 centuries. She had studied the healing arts since before this boy's grandparents were born. She had power that human medicine could not understand, and she would use every drop of it to save him. The technique was called soul weaving. It allowed a Valanthari to reach into another being and repair them from the inside out. It was painful, exhausting, and dangerous to the healer. Using it on a human whose biology was so different from her own was even more difficult. But she did not stop. Hour after hour, she sat with her hands on his chest, her energy flowing into his cells. She felt his bones knit back together. She sensed his organs healing. She guided his body toward recovery with pure force of will. And during the long hours when she waited for her strength to return, she read. The diplomats had given her access to Marcus Chun's files. His personal history, his psychological evaluations, his school records, his application for the exchange program. She read everything, learning about this strange human who had chosen silence as his weapon. His parents had died when he was 6. A car accident on a rainy highway. He had been in the back seat, unhurt. For hours, he had sat in the wreckage, waiting for help that did not come. When they finally found him, he was holding his mother's cold hand. After that, he entered the foster system. He was moved from home to home, never staying long. Some of the families were kind but overwhelmed. Others were cruel. One foster father had used Marcus as a punching bag. Another had locked him in closets for days at a time. He never complained. He never cried. He simply endured. His teachers described him as quiet and intelligent. They noted that he rarely spoke in class but always received perfect grades. Several of them had recommended him for special programs, seeing potential beneath his silence. Most had simply forgotten he existed. When he was 15, a counselor had finally asked him why he never talked about his problems. His answer had been recorded in his file. Talking about pain does not make it go away, he had said. It just invites more pain. Better to be quiet. Better to wait. Better to survive. Selithra read those words 3 times. She thought about all the insults she had thrown at him, all the cruelty she had shown, all the attempts she had made to break his silence. He had survived things she could not imagine. What was the mockery of an alien princess compared to years of abuse and abandonment? She felt something she had not felt in centuries. Shame. On the 4th day, Marcus opened his eyes. He was confused at first. The hospital room was bright and clean, filled with machines that beeped and hummed. His body ached, but the terrible pain was gone. He felt weak but whole. Then he saw the princess sitting beside his bed. She looked different. Her usual expression of arrogant superiority was gone. Her iridescent skin was pale, drained from days of healing. Her 4 eyes were tired and uncertain. "You are awake," she said. Her voice was soft. Marcus tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain shot through his chest, and he fell back against the pillows. "Do not move," Selithra said. "Your body is still recovering. The healing is not complete. What happened?" His voice was rough from days of disuse. "You saved my life." She said it simply, like she was stating a fact about the weather. 3 assassins came to kill me. You stopped them. You almost died in the process." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Are you hurt?" The question surprised her. He had been the one lying broken on the ground. He had been the one who had risked everything. And his first concern was for her? "I am fine," she said. "Because of you." Another silence. Then Marcus asked, "How long have I been here?" 3 days. "I have been healing you. It is a technique my people use. It is not usually performed on other species, but I did not have a choice." Marcus looked at her. Really looked at her. For the first time since they had met, there was something other than calm patience in his eyes. There was curiosity, and perhaps a small amount of gratitude. "Thank you," he said. Selithra shook her head. "Do not thank me. I owe you a debt I can never repay." She paused, struggling with words that did not come easily. "And I owe you an apology. I have treated you badly since I arrived. I have been cruel and arrogant and unkind. I had no reason for it except my own prejudice and pride." Marcus was quiet. She could not read his expression. "Why?" she asked suddenly. The question had been burning inside her for days. "Why did you save me? After everything I did to you, after all the insults and humiliations, I gave you no reason to care whether I lived or died. So why would you risk your life for me?" Marcus turned his head to look out the window. The Tokyo skyline stretched into the distance, a forest of glass and steel. He was silent for so long that Selithra thought he would not answer. Then he spoke. "When I was 9 years old, I had a foster father who liked to hurt me. He would burn me with cigarettes when he was drunk, which was most of the time. One night, there was a fire in the house. An electrical problem. I woke up and smelled smoke. I could have run. I could have saved myself and left him to burn. No one would have blamed me." He paused, his eyes still fixed on the distant buildings. "But I did not. I went to his room and dragged him out. He was heavy, and the smoke was thick, and I could barely breathe. I broke my arm pulling him through a window. Just like now." Selithra stared at him. "But why?" "He was cruel to you. He hurt you. He deserved to burn." "Maybe," Marcus agreed. "But I did not save him because he deserved it. I saved him because someone had to. Because giving cruelty back to the cruel just makes more cruelty in the world." He turned to look at her. "And because sometimes people change." The princess of the third house, who had lived for 300 years and seen wonders beyond human imagination, felt tears forming in her eyes. She had not cried since she was a child. "I have wronged you," she said. In her language, those words carried weight. They were not a simple apology. They were an admission of debt, a promise of repayment, a binding oath that could last for lifetimes. Marcus smiled faintly. It was the first time she had seen him smile. "You are young," he said. She laughed despite herself. A princess of an ancient empire, 3 centuries old, being called young by a 17-year-old human. It was absurd. It was impossible. It was exactly the kind of thing this strange boy would say. "I think," she said slowly, "that I have much to learn from your species." "We have much to learn from each other," Marcus replied. "That is why I wanted this job. Not to serve you, to understand you, to build bridges between our worlds." Selithra looked at this human boy who had saved her life, who had endured her cruelty without complaint, who had shown her what true strength looked like. She made a decision. "Then let us begin," she said. "Teach me what it means to be human." And for the first time since she had arrived on Earth, she truly wanted to learn. The footage spread across the galaxy like wildfire. 11 seconds. That was all it took for a lone human to defeat 3 trained Velanthari assassins. The video was grainy, captured by a damaged security camera, but it was enough. Enough to show a young man with no weapons, no armor, no special abilities, taking apart killers who had spent decades training for combat on 1,000 worlds. Beings of all species watched in disbelief. The Voluntary High Council was the first to demand answers. They gathered in their great chamber, a hall of living crystal that had stood for 10,000 years. And they watched the footage again and again. "Impossible," declared Admiral Kethvorin, the highest military commander in the Empire. "The footage must be altered. No primitive could do what this human did." "The footage is authentic," replied the chief scientist. "We have verified it 17 times. Every frame is real." "Then explain it," the admiral demanded. "How does a child from a backward planet defeat 3 of our elite soldiers?" No one could answer. The footage showed everything. It showed Marcus using the fountain to create an electrical trap. It showed him activating the fire system to blind his enemies. It showed him throwing a sword as a distraction while closing the distance. It showed him falling 2 stories and still finding the strength to kill Dodd. It was brutal. It was desperate. It was completely outside anything the Voluntari understood about combat. "He had no plan," one general observed. "He was improvising, making decisions in fractions of a second, adapting to each new situation as it happened." "That is impossible," another general replied. "Effective combat requires careful strategy, training, discipline. You cannot simply invent tactics in the middle of a fight." "And yet," the chief scientist said quietly, "he did." Princess Salithra stood before the council 3 weeks later. She had returned to her homeworld to give her report, but she had refused to leave Earth until Marcus was fully recovered. When she finally walked into the great chamber, she was not the same person who had left. "Tell us about the humans," her father commanded. He was the emperor of the third house, ancient and powerful, his 4 eyes glowing with controlled energy. "Tell us what you have learned." Salithra looked at the assembled leaders of her civilization. They were the most powerful beings in the known galaxy. They had conquered worlds, built empires, mastered sciences that younger species could not comprehend. They believed themselves superior to all other forms of life. She was about to change their minds. "Humans are not what we thought they were," she began. "We dismissed them as primitives. We laughed at their short lives and limited technology. We assumed that because they were young, they were weak. We were wrong." Murmurs spread through the chamber. No one spoke to the council this way. "The human species evolved on a dangerous world," Salithra continued. "For millions of years, they were hunted by predators faster and stronger than themselves. They survived through cooperation, creativity, and an absolute refusal to give up. These traits are built into their very nature." She touched a control, and the footage of Marcus played again on the chamber screens. This boy had no weapons, no training, no enhancement. He was facing opponents with centuries of combat experience and technology far beyond anything his planet has developed. By all logic, he should have died in the first second. But he did not, her father observed. No, he did not. Because humans do not fight the way we do. We plan, we prepare. We calculate the odds and proceed only when success is likely. Humans fight with something else. Something we bred out of ourselves thousands of years ago. "And what is that?" the admiral asked. "Desperation," Salithra said. "Creativity born from desperation. The ability to look at an impossible situation and find a solution that no one else would consider. The willingness to sacrifice everything, including their own lives, for something they believe in." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We have a saying, superior technology always wins. Humans have a different saying. Necessity is the mother of invention. When they are pushed into a corner, they do not surrender. They adapt. They improvise. They find ways to win that should not exist. The council was silent. There is another thing, Selithra added. Something I did not understand until Marcus Chun explained it to me. Humans have a capacity for forgiveness that we have lost. They can suffer great cruelty and still choose kindness. They can be hurt again and again and still refuse to become cruel themselves. That sounds like weakness, the Admiral said. I thought so too. I was wrong. It takes more strength to forgive than to hate. It takes more courage to help your enemy than to destroy them. Humans understand this in a way we have forgotten. She looked directly at her father. I recommend that we accept humanity into the Galactic Concordance as full members, not as a junior species, not as primitives to be guided, as equals. The chamber exploded with protest. Full membership had never been offered to a species so young. It went against thousands of years of tradition. It was unthinkable. Silence, the Emperor commanded. The noise stopped immediately. He looked at his daughter with ancient, knowing eyes. You have changed, Selithra. I have learned, Father. That is not the same thing. Perhaps not. He turned to the council. We will consider my daughter's recommendation. In the meantime, I want to know everything about this Marcus Chun, where he came from, how he was trained, whether there are others like him. There are billions of others, Selithra said quietly. They are all like him. Every human carries this potential within them. We have simply never given them a reason to show it. The Emperor was silent for a long moment. Then he smiled, a rare expression on his ancient face. Interesting. It seems we have much to learn about our new neighbors. 10 years later, Ambassador Marcus Chun stood before the Galactic Concordance and signed the treaty that made humanity full members. He was 27 years old, young by any standard, but he had earned the respect of species that had existed since before Earth's son was born. Princess Selithra stood beside him. No longer a princess, but a diplomat herself. They had worked together for a decade, building bridges between worlds, negotiating treaties, finding solutions that seemed impossible. They had become something that surprised them both, friends. After the ceremony, a reporter from a voluntary news network approached Marcus with a question. Ambassador Chun, many people consider you the symbol of human potential. The incident in Tokyo changed how the galaxy sees your species. How does that make you feel? Marcus was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. He still spoke carefully, still chose his words with patience. Some things did not change. I am not a symbol, he said finally. I am just a human who was in the right place at the right time. What I did in Tokyo, any human could have done. We are all capable of more than we believe. But you chose silence for so long, the reporter pressed. Why did you never defend yourself against the princess's insults? Why did you never fight back? Marcus glanced at Selithra, who was watching with an amused expression. Because fighting back was not the point, he said. The point was to understand, to learn, to find common ground. You cannot build bridges by burning them first. The reporter seemed confused. That seems like a very passive approach. Perhaps. But I have found that patience accomplishes more than anger. Silence teaches more than shouting. And kindness, in the end, changes more than cruelty ever could. Later that night, Marcus and Selithra stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city of the Valentari homeworld. The buildings were made of living crystal, glowing with inner light. Ships moved through the sky like schools of luminous fish. It was beautiful in a way that still took his breath away. Do you ever regret it? Selithra asked. Those months when I treated you so badly? Marcus shook his head. No, those months taught me who you really were. Beneath the arrogance and the cruelty, you were just lonely. Just afraid. Just trying to make sense of a universe that did not make sense. You saw that in me? I see it in everyone. It is not hard, if you take the time to look. Sayelithra was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "The Council still does not fully understand your species. They know that humans are resilient. They know that humans are creative. But they do not understand why. Why do you think we are this way?" She considered the question carefully. "I think it is because you know you are going to die. You have such short lives compared to us. Every moment matters. Every choice has weight. You cannot afford to waste time on hatred or regret." Marcus nodded slowly. "Maybe you are right. Or maybe it is simpler than that. Maybe we are just stubborn. Too stubborn to give up, even when we should." Sayelithra laughed, that crystalline sound that had once been so harsh and was now so familiar. "Yes, I think that is closer to the truth." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the lights of the alien city. Two people from different worlds, different species, different lives, united by an incident of violence and saved by an act of mercy. "Thank you," Sayelithra said suddenly. "For what?" "For not giving up on me. For seeing something worth saving, even when I gave you every reason not to." Marcus smiled. It was the same gentle smile he had given her in the hospital room all those years ago. "That is what humans do," he said. "We see the best in people, even when they cannot see it themselves. And we wait for them to find it."